It was a quiet afternoon in the park, the kind that Emma cherished. The sun cast a warm, golden glow over the path as she strolled, enjoying the rhythmic crunch of leaves beneath her feet. She had always loved this park, with its towering oak trees and peaceful, almost magical aura. It was her escape, her little slice of serenity in the otherwise busy city. Today, though, she found herself distracted. Thoughts of work deadlines and responsibilities buzzed in her mind, but the fresh air was enough to push them aside, at least for now. As she rounded a bend in the path, something unusual caught her eye. At first, it was just a flash of movement, small and quick, darting between the bushes. Emma paused, her curiosity piqued. Then she saw it clearly, a tiny puppy, barely more than a ball of fur, wandering aimlessly. It wasn't running, it was walking slowly, head down, tail between its legs, clearly lost and scared. Emma's heart immediately went out to the poor creature. The puppy, scruffy and dirty, looked up at her with wide, fearful eyes. Its coat was matted, its paws worn as though it had been wandering for days. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't understand how anyone could abandon such a helpless animal. Without thinking, she crouched down, holding out her hand gently, speaking softly to the puppy. "Hey there, little one. Are you lost?" The puppy's eyes darted from side to side, wary, but something in Emma's voice seemed to soothe it. After a moment, the puppy took a tentative step forward, then another, and another, until it was close enough to sniff her hand. Emma's heart melted at the sight of its small, trembling body. "Come on, it's okay," she murmured, her voice soft but firm. The puppy hesitated just a moment longer, then nuzzled into her palm, as if realizing that she wasn't a threat. Emma's thoughts raced as she gently scooped the puppy into her arms. It was so light, barely more than a few pounds, but its body felt tense with anxiety. The little creature didn't struggle, though. It seemed to trust her. She stood up, cradling the puppy against her chest as it let out a small whimper, looking up at her with those big, dark eyes. Emma's heart twisted in her chest. There was no way she could leave it out here. Not like this. The puppy's coat was filthy, its fur tangled and matted in places. The poor thing looked like it had been on its own for days, maybe even longer. Emma glanced around, hoping to spot anyone who might be looking for it. But the park was quiet, and the only sound was the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. No one was in sight. She took a deep breath, making up her mind. She would take it home. She could post flyers, call the shelters, do everything she could to find the puppy's owner. But for now, the most important thing was to get the puppy somewhere safe, somewhere warm, somewhere it wouldn't have to be afraid anymore. With the little puppy still nestled against her chest, Emma began walking back toward her car, already imagining what she would need to do to care for the tiny creature. As she walked, a question lingered in the back of her mind. Who would just leave a puppy out here to fend for itself? Emma shook her head, the question unanswered for now. For the moment, she was just determined to get this little one to safety, and maybe, just maybe, help it find its way home. The drive home was a quiet one. The little puppy, still cradled in Emma's arms, had settled down. Its small body was warm against her chest, and for the first time since she'd found it, Emma felt a sense of calm. The puppy seemed to be at ease now, though it still looked around warily, as if unsure of its new surroundings. Emma glanced down at it, her heart swelling with affection. It was so small, so vulnerable. She could tell that it hadn't had an easy life, but she was determined to change that. When she arrived at her apartment, Emma gently lifted the puppy out of the car and walked up the stairs, feeling the weight of its trust in her arms. The moment they stepped inside, the puppy froze, looking around the unfamiliar space with wide, uncertain eyes. Emma set it down on the soft rug by the door, watching as the puppy hesitated before sniffing the floor. It padded around in circles, trying to make sense of its new environment. "Okay, little one," Emma said softly, kneeling down beside it. "This is home for now. You're safe here." She moved to grab a small bowl from the kitchen, filling it with water and setting it down beside the puppy. It seemed to notice the water and, after a few moments of hesitation, began lapping it up eagerly. Emma smiled to herself as she watched, relieved to see the puppy showing signs of comfort. But there was something more, something that tugged at her heart. As the puppy drank, Its tail flicked nervously, and it glanced toward the door as if waiting for someone to come in. Emma's smile faded slightly. The puppy was clearly still holding on to the hope that whoever it had been waiting for would show up. She wished she could tell it that everything was going to be okay, that no one was going to take it away from her. But she also knew the reality of the situation. This puppy was lost, and it needed someone to care for it, maybe more than she could ever understand. Emma spent the next few hours carefully cleaning the puppy's coat. It took some time, but as she gently combed through the tangled fur, she noticed that the puppy seemed to relax in her hands. It leaned into her touch, its breathing steady and calm now. Emma found herself talking to it, explaining little things as she worked. "I know you've had a rough time, but I'm here to help. We'll figure this out together." When the puppy was clean and dry, Emma set up a small bed for it near the couch. The puppy sniffed around it for a moment before curling up. Its body relaxed for the first time since Emma had found it. She watched it settle in, her heart full. For the first time, the little creature seemed at peace. Emma couldn't help but feel a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing she had provided a safe space for it. She glanced at her phone, remembering the flyers she promised to post. But as she looked at the puppy, still curled up on the bed, a thought began to settle into her mind. What if no one came for it? What if this little puppy, this Charlie, had been abandoned for good? A pang of worry gripped her chest, but she quickly shook it off. She couldn't think like that. For now, the puppy was safe, and that was all that mattered. Emma sat down on the couch, looking at the puppy. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered, more to herself than to Charlie. "I'll take care of you." The eyes glowed in the dim light, catching Emily's attention with a sudden intensity. At first, she thought they might be a trick of the fading light, perhaps a reflection from a distant animal or even the moonlight playing through the trees. But then the eyes blinked. They weren't far off, moving with an eerie grace through the underbrush. Slowly, a figure stepped forward, its shape materializing out of the darkness. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, her breath shallow. The figure was large, nearly the size of a small pony, its body covered in thick gray fur. Its movements were fluid, deliberate, and calm. It was a wolf. For a moment, Emily froze, too terrified to even breathe. She had heard stories about wolves from her parents, how they lived in packs, how they could be dangerous if provoked. She had never seen one up close, and the thought of it made her heart race. But the wolf didn't come closer. Instead, it stood still, watching her with its intelligent, amber eyes. Emily's breath caught in her throat as the creature's gaze locked with hers. For a moment, the world seemed to fade away, and the only thing that mattered was the quiet, unspoken connection between them. Then, without warning, the wolf tilted its head, as if considering her situation. It let out a soft whine, low and almost sorrowful, before turning away. Emily blinked in confusion as the wolf's body melted back into the shadows, leaving her in a daze. She didn't know what to make of it. Was it dangerous, or had it just cared? But then, as if to answer her unspoken question, the wolf returned, this time not alone. One by one, other wolves emerged from the darkness, their eyes glowing in the dim light. They circled the base of the cliff, moving in slow, cautious steps, as if carefully evaluating the girl. The alpha wolf, the largest of them all, moved to the front. Its fur was silver gray, nearly shimmering in the moonlight. She could feel the weight of its gaze, both powerful and gentle at once. It lowered its head slightly, studying Emily, then stepped toward her. Emily's heart fluttered. The wolves weren't approaching in a threatening way. They didn't growl, they didn't show their teeth. They seemed curious, almost protective. She could hardly believe it, but in that moment, she didn't feel scared. Not anymore. It was a typical afternoon when Emma's phone rang, its shrill tone breaking the silence of her apartment. She glanced at the screen and saw a number she didn't recognize, but something about the call felt different, urgent almost. She answered, her curiosity piqued. "Hello," she said, trying to sound calm, though she couldn't ignore the flutter of anticipation in her chest. The voice on the other end was soft and trembling, as though the caller had been holding back tears. "Is this Emma, the one who found the puppy?" Emma's heart skipped a beat. Yes, that's me. Who is this? She asked, her breath catching in her throat. The woman hesitated before answering. My name is Laura. I believe you found my dog. His name is Charlie. Emma's fingers tightened around the phone. Charlie. She glanced over at the little dog curled up on his bed, his ears perked at the sound of her voice. Could it really be him? Are you sure? I've been posting about him everywhere, but no one has come forward. Laura's voice faltered. I'm certain he's my dog. I've been looking for him for so long. There was a crack in her voice, the kind that suggested a deep hidden pain. I just didn't know where to turn. I've been trying to find him for over 2 years now. 2 years? Emma's mind raced, the words sinking in slowly. How could Charlie have been lost for that long? Was this really the same dog? She thought back to the puppy she had found in the park, small and frail, clearly frightened. But 2 years? The puppy didn't seem old enough to have been missing for so long. Laura's voice grew more desperate. Please, I need to see him. I can't believe he's still out there. Where is he? I have to get him back. Emma felt a pang of guilt tighten in her chest. She had grown so attached to Charlie. He was hers now in a way, but the sincerity in Laura's voice made her pause. Was she really the rightful owner, or was this some twisted coincidence? Are you sure he's yours? I mean, are you certain he's been missing all this time? Emma asked, trying to make sense of the situation. I found him just a few days ago in the park. He doesn't look like he's been on the street for that long. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Laura spoke again, her voice quieter now. I don't know how to explain it, she said, sounding defeated. Charlie went missing after a very difficult time in my life. I had to let him go, and I've regretted it every single day. I never wanted to lose him. Emma felt a tightness in her throat. It sounded like Laura was speaking from a place of deep regret, but there was something more, something Emma couldn't quite put her finger on. I'm sorry, Emma said softly. I'm not sure what to think. I've grown really attached to him, and he's part of my life now. There was a pause before Laura replied, her voice thick with emotion. I understand. I really do. But please, just let me see him. I need to know he's okay. Emma's heart raced. She couldn't deny the pull of Laura's words. Was Charlie really hers to keep? Or had he been lost for so long that it was cruel to deny his reunion with the woman who had once loved him? Okay, Emma said, her voice steady but laced with uncertainty. We can meet, but I need to know more about him first. I need to be sure. Laura agreed, her voice cracking with relief. Thank you. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see him. As Emma hung up the phone, she looked at Charlie, who was now sitting up, ears perked and eyes wide. She felt a mix of emotions, guilt, hope, confusion. What if Laura was telling the truth? What if Charlie had a past that Emma didn't understand? The thought lingered as she stared at the puppy, who seemed to be waiting for something, though Emma wasn't sure what. She took a deep breath, knowing that everything was about to change. The meeting place was a quiet park, the same one where Emma had first found Charlie. She chose it for its familiarity, a neutral ground where neither she nor Laura would feel too overwhelmed. Emma arrived early, her heart pounding in her chest. She sat on a bench near the spot where she had discovered Charlie, the memory of that moment still vivid in her mind. As she looked down at the puppy, now resting peacefully at her feet, a mix of emotions stirred within her. Charlie had changed since she found him. His fur was cleaner, his body less tense. He had become more playful and affectionate, following Emma everywhere and sleeping soundly by her side at night. He had become her constant companion, her little shadow. Yet now the reality of what might happen, of Charlie's possible reunion with his past, was slowly creeping in. Would he remember Laura? Would he even want to go back to her? Emma wasn't sure she was ready for either of those possibilities. The sound of approaching footsteps pulled her from her thoughts. Emma looked up and saw a woman walking toward her, her eyes scanning the area. She was tall, with auburn hair pulled back into a loose ponytail, wearing a simple sweater and jeans. Emma knew immediately that this was Laura. She had seen her face briefly in the profile picture on the flyer she had posted. The woman looked nervous, glancing around, before her eyes landed on Charlie. Emma stood up as Laura drew closer. The moment their eyes met, Laura's face softened with a mixture of disbelief and hope. "Is it really him?" Laura asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Charlie." Charlie, who had been sniffing around, froze at the sound of his name. He turned toward Laura, his body stiffening for a moment before he slowly took a few cautious steps forward. His tail wagged tentatively, but Emma noticed that he didn't rush toward her. There was a hesitation in his movements, a sense of uncertainty. Laura's breath caught as she took a step forward, her hand trembling as she reached out to him. "Oh my God, it really is you." Her voice broke, and she dropped to her knees in front of him, tears welling up in her eyes. "I've missed you so much, Charlie." Charlie's ears perked up, and he took another step, but he didn't jump into her arms as Emma expected. Instead, he paused, looking between Laura and Emma, his small body shaking slightly. Emma held her breath, watching as Charlie slowly approached Laura. The reunion, which Emma had imagined would be full of joy, was instead filled with a strange, tense silence. Laura reached out and gently stroked Charlie's fur. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her tears falling freely now. "I never wanted to leave you. I never wanted you to be alone. I thought about you every day." Charlie licked Laura's hand, but Emma could see that he wasn't the same puppy he had been when he first met her. He seemed torn, unsure of where he truly belonged. He stepped back from Laura slightly, his eyes darting between the two women as if trying to make sense of the situation. "Charlie," Emma said softly, crouching down beside him. "You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. Take your time." She looked up at Laura, who was still on the ground, her face full of emotion. "He's been through a lot. I'm sure he's confused." Laura nodded, her chest rising and falling as she struggled to control her sobs. "I know," she said. "I can only imagine how much he's been through." The reunion wasn't the joyful, tearful moment Emma had hoped for. It was filled with uncertainty and quiet sadness, as if Charlie was caught between two worlds. Emma watched, her heart heavy with the knowledge that no matter what, the bond she shared with Charlie had grown so deep, and she wasn't sure how she could let him go. The air between the three of them was thick with unspoken words, but Emma knew the decision wasn't hers alone to make. Charlie would have to choose, and as she looked at him, still standing between them, she wasn't sure which world he would choose. The silence in the park was heavy, filled only by the faint rustling of leaves and the distant sounds of city life. Laura, still kneeling on the ground, continued to gently stroke Charlie's fur, her tears a silent testament to the years she had spent without him. She looked up at Emma, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "I never wanted to lose him," Laura whispered again, as if saying the words aloud might somehow bring back the time they had lost. Emma could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She had never imagined that meeting Charlie's original owner would be so complicated. When she found the puppy in the park, it had seemed so clear. He was lost, alone, and she would take him in, care for him, and help him find his place in the world. But now with Laura there, the situation felt like a tightrope walk between the past and the present. Was she really ready to give Charlie up? Could she do it without feeling as if she was losing a part of herself? Charlie, who had been sniffing around cautiously, seemed to sense the tension. He glanced between Laura and Emma, his eyes darting back and forth as though trying to make sense of the two women. His tail twitched slightly, but he didn't make any move to go to either one of them. Instead, he stood still, his small body tense, his ears perked up as though listening for something that only he could hear. Emma watched him carefully, her heart aching. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the uncertainty, the confusion. It was clear he wasn't ready to make a decision. After everything he'd been through, could he really choose between two lives? Or was he simply caught in a moment of hesitation, unsure of where he truly belonged? Laura, sensing the same tension, took a step back, her voice quieter now. "I don't want to pressure him," she said, her gaze never leaving Charlie. "I just want him to know that I'm here, that I never wanted to let him go." Emma nodded, her throat tight. She could feel her own connection to Charlie, the bond that had grown between them since the day she found him. He had become her constant companion, and the thought of him walking away, of losing him, was almost too painful to bear. but she couldn't ignore the fact that Charlie had a past, a life before her, and that life was calling to him now in the form of Laura's quiet voice and trembling hands. Emma took a deep breath, her voice soft but steady. I think he needs time, she said, her eyes on Charlie. He's been through so much. I don't think he can just make a choice like this right away. Laura nodded, understanding the weight of Emma's words. You're right. He's been through so much already. Her voice cracked slightly as she continued. I just want him to know I still love him, that I never gave up on him. Charlie, still standing between them, finally took a few hesitant steps forward. Emma held her breath as he approached Laura, his body language still uncertain. But when he reached her, he stopped and looked up at her with those wide, soulful eyes. For a moment, there was nothing but quiet. Then, very slowly, Charlie moved toward Laura, nuzzling against her hand in a tentative gesture of recognition. Laura's face lit up with a mix of relief and disbelief, her tears flowing freely now. She reached down, carefully lifting him into her arms. Charlie, she whispered, her voice full of emotion. I thought I'd lost you forever. Emma felt a pang of sorrow, but she forced herself to stay composed. This was a moment she had known might come, but it didn't make it any easier. She watched as Laura held Charlie close, whispering soft words of love and regret into his ear. Charlie seemed to settle into her arms, his body relaxing, though his eyes were still fixed on Emma, as if seeking reassurance. Emma took a deep breath, knowing what had to be done. She smiled softly at Laura, her voice quiet but sincere. He's been with me for a while now. He's been through a lot, but I know he's found comfort in your presence. Laura nodded, her voice thick with gratitude. I can never thank you enough for taking care of him. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't found out he was safe. As Laura held Charlie, Emma stepped back, allowing them their moment. She knew this was what had to happen, but the bittersweet feeling of letting go lingered in her heart. She had been the one to save him, but now, it seemed Charlie had found his way back to where he truly belonged. And yet, as she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that their story wasn't over, that somehow their paths would cross again. Days passed after the emotional reunion in the park. Emma tried to move forward, but the feeling of emptiness lingered. She had done what was right for Charlie, she told herself, but it didn't make it any easier. She missed the little dog, the way he had curled up beside her at night, the way his eyes sparkled when they played in the yard. It was hard not to feel like a part of her had been taken away when he left with Laura. But then, one evening, as Emma sat on her couch trying to focus on a book, her phone rang again. She hesitated, unsure of who it could be. But when she saw the name on the screen, her heart skipped a beat. It was Laura. Emma took a deep breath and answered the call. Hello. Emma, it's Laura, came the voice on the other end, sounding urgent and slightly breathless. I need to talk to you. Something's happened, and I'm not sure what to do. Emma's stomach tightened. What's wrong? Is Charlie okay? There was a pause, then Laura's voice cracked. Charlie. He's gone. A sharp chill ran through Emma's body. Gone? What do you mean gone? She asked, her mind racing. He ran away, Laura said, her voice thick with panic. I've been looking for him everywhere, but he's nowhere to be found. I've called his name. I've checked all the usual spots, but he's disappeared. Emma's heart sank. She felt the pang of guilt, though she knew it wasn't her fault. How long has he been missing? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Since this morning, Laura replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I've called animal shelters. I've posted flyers, but no one's seen him. I don't know what to do. Emma stood up, pacing around her apartment, her mind racing. Okay, don't worry. I'll help you find him, she said, even though the thought of seeing Charlie again stirred up a mixture of emotions. He had run away from Laura. Could he be looking for her? Or had he simply been confused by the sudden change in his life? I don't know if he'll come back to me, Laura said, the fear in her voice palpable. I don't know if he remembers me or if he even wants to. But I can't just sit here. He's my dog. I have to find him. Emma's thoughts raced as she considered the situation. She wanted to help. She didn't want to see Laura in pain, and she still cared about Charlie deeply. But there was also a part of her that wondered if Charlie's disappearance was more than just a case of him running away. Could he be trying to find his way back to Emma? Could he have been confused by the sudden changes in his life? "I'll help you, Laura," Emma said, her voice firm despite the turmoil in her chest. "I'll help you look for him. We'll find him together." The line went quiet for a moment before Laura spoke again, her voice filled with relief. "Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know what I'd do without your help." Emma's mind was racing as she hung up the phone. What did this mean? Was Charlie truly lost, or was there something deeper at play? She couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. But one thing was clear, she had to act quickly. If there was any chance of finding Charlie, they needed to start looking now. Emma grabbed her jacket and her car keys, the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. As she stepped out into the night, her heart ached with the uncertainty of what was to come. She didn't know if she was about to search for Charlie the lost puppy, or if she was stepping back into a chapter of his life she wasn't sure she was ready to open again. But one thing was certain, she wouldn't let him go, not without a fight. The search for Charlie was frantic. Emma and Laura spent hours driving around the neighborhood, calling his name, checking local shelters, and posting updated flyers. Every corner they turned, every street they walked seemed to lead them to more dead ends. Emma felt a familiar knot tightening in her stomach. The puppy that had once brightened her life had slipped away, and now she couldn't help but feel the same desperation Laura had expressed. They had retraced all the paths Charlie used to take when he was first with Emma, hoping he would return to some familiar place. It seemed impossible that he had just disappeared without a trace. Each time they checked a shelter or an alley, Emma's heart dropped a little more. She kept telling herself that Charlie wasn't gone forever, that he was somewhere waiting to be found. But the longer they searched, the more she feared the worst. As the sun began to set, casting an orange glow over the city, Emma and Laura stood at the edge of the park where they had first met. The spot where Charlie had once been found felt eerily quiet now. Emma leaned against a tree, trying to steady her breath. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, but when she checked it, there were no new messages. There were no sightings, no updates. Laura stood nearby, her face drawn with exhaustion, her eyes red from hours of searching. "I don't know what else to do," she said, her voice heavy with defeat. I thought we were finally going to be okay. But now he's gone again." Emma's chest tightened as she watched Laura struggle. She wasn't sure how much longer either of them could keep going. She felt the same sadness rising inside her, the same fear. Charlie had been a part of her life for so long, and she knew that letting go again would be harder than ever. Just as Emma was about to suggest they call it a night and regroup in the morning, she heard a faint, familiar sound in the distance, something that made her stop dead in her tracks. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her heart leaping in her chest. Laura looked up, her eyes widening. "What is it?" she asked, suddenly alert. There, from the shadows near the park's entrance, came a small, unmistakable bark. It was Charlie's bark, soft, unsure, but unmistakably his. Emma's heart soared, and without thinking, she ran toward the sound, calling his name. "Charlie, Charlie, is that you?" The bark came again, followed by the sound of small paws tapping on the pavement. Emma's pulse quickened, and she rounded the corner to see a familiar sight. Charlie was standing there, looking at her with wide, curious eyes, his tail wagging cautiously. He seemed to be unsure, hesitant, but he recognized her. His little body shook slightly as he took a tentative step forward. "Charlie," Emma exclaimed, her voice breaking with emotion. She knelt down, arms outstretched, and within seconds, the little dog bounded toward her, jumping into her arms as if nothing had changed. His small body was warm and familiar, and Emma hugged him tightly, not caring that she was crying. Laura came up behind Emma, tears in her eyes. He's here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He found you." Charlie licked Emma's cheek as she held him close, and for a moment, nothing else mattered. The world seemed to stop spinning as she and Charlie shared a quiet reunion. Emma looked up at Laura, who was standing there, her expression a mixture of relief and wonder. "He found his way back to you," Laura said softly, her voice full of awe. I thought I had lost him for good, but he came back. Emma nodded, her throat tight. I think he was confused, she said. He's been through so much. He needed time. Laura smiled through her tears, taking a step forward. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You've taken care of him. You've given him love. I can't take that away from you. Emma glanced down at Charlie, who was content in her arms. It was clear that he hadn't made a full decision, and for the first time, Emma realized that maybe it wasn't about whose home he belonged to. Maybe Charlie just needed to find his place, and he was still trying to figure it out. He's not just yours or mine, Emma said, her voice soft but firm. He's our little Charlie. He's part of both of us now. And I think that's enough. As she said the words, Charlie snuggled closer to her chest, his tail wagging contentedly. He had found his way back to Emma, but something had shifted in that moment. There would always be a part of his past with Laura, a piece of his life that belonged to her. But now there was a new chapter, one where he was loved by both women who had cared for him. And that was something they could both embrace. And as the three of them stood there, under the fading light of the day, Emma knew that while Charlie's journey had been full of uncertainty, it had also brought them all closer together in a way no one could have predicted.